Hello, this is Joe Baker with Joe Baker Photography. I've had a couple people inquire as to my editing process, and I thought I would finally make a video about it. I do 99% of my editing here in Lightroom. As you can see, this is Lightroom 5. I've already imported the photos, and today we're going to be editing this image today of this particular model. This actually is straight out of camera. And you can see, if we zoom in here, the eyes are very sharp and the color looks pretty good, but I feel I could add just a little bit more pop to it. Usually what I do, well, let me tell you about this image. This was shot in RAW, of course, 1/400th of a second at f2.8, ISO 100, and I use the 7200 f2.8 on a Canon 6D body. You can just hit the letter I, and that'll help you rotate and get this information off. So we're going to go ahead and turn it off for now. I always like to start over here on the basic treatment panel, and every now and then I just like to hit auto just to see what the computer comes up with, or what the program comes up with, and you can see there that it actually darkened it a little bit. It brought down the exposure and the contrast, and I don't like what it did. So we can actually hit Control Z, and that'll undo the auto tone. I actually like the exposure where it's at. You can see through the histogram that it is a little more on the bright side, and you can see some of the highlights popping up here on this top edge, which I don't mind at all. We'll go here to the exposure. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. Well, probably keep it at let's do 0.10 to bring it up just a little bit. The exposure is fine. I could probably go up to this a little bit more on that. I like to bring the highlights down, and then if there's any shadows, which there isn't any shadows because it was pretty bright during this day, we can adjust those up and down. I kind of like it right about there. The whites, it's pretty bright, so we'll leave it alone. And the blacks, this is just my style. I like to bring the blacks down, as that helps bring just a little bit more contrast to it. In all of my images, I always add a +10 clarity on it, and that just makes it just a little bit sharper. I usually don't mess with any of this other stuff. I'll go down to noise reduction, even though there's not really any noise in this image, and just out of habit, I take it to a 20. You can also come down here to the profile correction. One thing that I found is that it kind of flattens out the model a little bit, so it's up to you if you want to do that. I'm going to leave it off for now. And then I'll go here. Jen, I'm recording. Close the door. Go. The next thing, sorry, that was my son. The next thing that I like to do is I like to actually play with the color balance or the white balance. I like to see what the computer thinks, and you can tell that it makes it really blue. I like my shots, I'm a little bit warmer. Let's see what daylight shows. And then we go to cloudy, and usually I'll set it as shot because I think it looks really good the way that it is right now. The next thing that I do is I'll go here and work on the eyes, and using my adjustment brush I just use the basic iris enhance, which I think is already preset in Lightroom. I'll click that, and then I use my brush is 100% feather, and then I put the density at 100%, but I put the flow at only 75%. You can enable or disable the auto mask. I find that it doesn't really matter. We'll go ahead and click on auto mask, so maybe it'll just keep it within the eye, and we'll go over both eyes like that. And then the next thing that I do is I click on new and go to lighten, and I like to brighten just the whites just a little bit in here. One thing that I find a lot of new photographers do is that they, once they get into editing, they will really overdo the eyes, and I try to keep them down to a minimum just to make sure they don't look like alien eyes. The neat thing about Lightroom is you have this little window over here, And you can tell if you overdo the eyes because they'll start showing up really funky in that little window. The next thing I do is I will actually work on any blemishes or anything like that. And we have a couple here. We'll hit the letter Q, which will take us to our blemish tool, or we can use the spot removal tool here. It's the shortcut Q, spot removal tool, not blemish tool. So, and then I'll just take on that, and I'll go here at any major ones that I see. I don't like to go too crazy on this. I just want to make sure that I'm getting most of them. And you can, here's a little neat little trick. If you hold down the space bar, it turns into a hand, and you can slide the picture or image up and do it that way, and we can get rid of some of these little spots here. Now the weird thing about Lightroom, sometimes it chooses a weird spot to sample from, so I always try to make sure that it looks like it's gonna do what we need it to do. And then we'll go right here, right here, right here, right here, right here. And then we'll scroll down just a little bit further here. And we got a couple of red spots here, nothing major. Here, here, right here. Alright, so I'll hit the done, and then we'll hit Z to zoom out, and that looks pretty good. Now keep in mind that your clients or people don't usually have the ability to zoom in this much, so there's no point in trying to work so hard on it to get it there. I don't like to work on it too much. I just like to clear out the big stuff. If there's any big stuff, her complexion is actually fairly nice, so there's not much to do. The next thing I'll do is I'll come over here to the adjustment brushes, and there's a soften skin. Now this is one that I made, and I call it soften skin -80. The preset actually is set the clarity to 100%. I find that makes the skin a little plastic, so I turn that down and go with -80, and I put the sharpness at 25. And then my brush is still set to a 75% flow, so that keeps me from overdoing it. And then I like to hit O, which is right here, the Show Selected Mask Overlay, and that makes sure that I get where I want to go. We want to paint just on the skin area, like so, and I come in around here, like that, and I can increase down here, like that, that, and right there, there, there. And then, and if you wanted to, you could zoom in here and try to get some areas that you may or may not have missed. Like I said, her complexion is actually really good. I don't want to soften the eyebrows or eyelashes, so I want to make sure that those get removed. And you can see that it turned to negative. All you have to do is hold down the Alt key, and it will brush away what you brushed over. So we can do this and make sure that we're not losing any detail in the eyelashes. So come here, put in this, that, and I'll go up a little further, and we'll paint this right here. And some people like to use frequency separation. I've done that before, depending on like the model's skin, but like I said, she doesn't really need it. We can hit the letter O. That removes the overlay, and then I will zoom out. And you can see that it did just a little bit, and if we click this button here, you can see what it did. Not too much, but it just smoothed it out just a little bit. Now, these different spots are the different brushes that I used for. One is the eyes, one is the lighting, and this one is for the skin. So we'll hit done, and that looks good right there. And I'll come back over here. I like to use this radial filter, especially on bright images. What happened was that the camera exposed for the background a little bit, and I feel like she's a little underexposed, so I will click the radial filter, and I'll go to exposure. Right now it's currently set at 0.41, and then I have the mask inverted, so anything inside the mask is going to be brightened because of the setting here. And then I also have the feather at 50% just to make sure that it's a nice soft feather. And then I'll usually drag up here, and then I'll come down, and then I can just kind of work this the way that I want it to be right here. So I think that's looking pretty good right there. And then we'll hit done. And you can see that her face is really bright, and this is actually a very bright scene. So I want to kind of darken this a little bit to put more of the emphasis on her face and these wonderful eyes here. So we'll come over here and we'll use Vignette 2. And you can see how it darkens the edges here. The reason I actually like the preset for the vignettes that Lightroom has, because it's very subtle, and you can actually adjust that more if you come down here on the right hand side to effects. It does a -35 on the amount of vignetting, and then you can change these if you wanted to, but I like it the way it is. There's also a preset here for Vignette 1, meaning it's going to do less of a vignette, but I actually like the pop of this one here. And you can see there that everything looks good to me, and the colors look great. The last thing we need to do is just export this to a JPEG, and I always put my watermark on it, and because it's so bright in this area, I'm going to actually use my black one. So I'll right click on this and I'll hit export, export, and bring up this. And for some reason it is not showing up on my thing, so well, we'll cancel that. That's it. Just need to export it and it's good to go. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or let me know what you think. Thanks.